When the neighbors finally knocked on his door that December night, the silence inside felt heavier than usual. The lights had been off for days, and the mailbox was overflowing. When they finally got in, they found him there alone, still, and far from the laughter that once defined his childhood. The man lying lifeless inside that modest California home was none other than Ken Weatherwax, the boy America once knew as Pugsley Addams, a face that had once grinned mischievously from millions of black and white television screens, now faded into a quiet, forgotten end. You won't believe how a child star so loved by the world ended up living in obscurity, battling heartbreak, financial ruin, and years of rejection, before finding peace through an unexpected redemption that came just before his final breath. This is the haunting, mysterious, and deeply human story of Ken Weatherwax, the real Pugsley Addams. Back in 1964, America was falling in love with the strangest family on television. The Addams Family wasn't your typical sitcom. While other shows portrayed perfect suburban households with smiling moms and polite dads, the Addams Family gave audiences something wildly different. A family that celebrated the macabre with charm and humor. Morticia, Gomez, Wednesday, and of course Pugsley, the round-faced, mischief-loving son who seemed to find joy in everything bizarre. Ken Weatherwax was only 9 years old when he landed that iconic role. Hollywood had found its perfect Pugsley, chubby-cheeked, energetic, and naturally funny. Viewers loved him instantly. But behind those famous smiles and playful antics, Ken was just a kid navigating a world built on scripts, cameras, and expectations far too heavy for his small shoulders. Born in Los Angeles in 1955, Ken came from a family already steeped in show business. His aunt was Ruby Keeler, the beloved star of classic musicals from the 1930s, and his half-brother Joey De Vieira had found success playing Porky on Last. Acting wasn't a dream for Ken, it was expected. He grew up surrounded by the idea that fame was the family trade, but what no one prepared him for was what fame could take away. At first, life on set felt magical. The Addams Family cast was like a second family to him. John Aston, who played Gomez, treated Ken like a son. Carolyn Jones, the graceful Morticia, always made sure he was comfortable during long shoots. But when the cameras stopped rolling and the laughter ended, the real world felt colder. When The Addams Family was canceled in 1966 after just 2 seasons, Ken was barely 11. Overnight, the show that had made him a household name vanished, and so did the security that came with it. In an instant, Ken Weatherwax went from being a national treasure to being just another kid struggling to find out who he was. Hollywood had moved on. Casting directors no longer called. The public adored Pugsley, but no one wanted Ken. He was typecast, frozen in time as that pudgy, mischievous boy who belonged to a spooky TV family. Every time he auditioned for new roles, producers told him the same thing: "You're great, but we can't see past Pugsley." For a child, those words were devastating. They didn't just end his career, they erased his identity. By his teenage years, Ken had drifted out of acting entirely. He attended public school, but fame had left its scars. Classmates teased him for his old role, calling him Pugsley instead of Ken. He tried to fit in, but he never felt like he belonged anywhere. The laughter he once shared with millions turned into whispers behind his back. As the years rolled on, Ken's life took darker turns. The glamour of Hollywood had disappeared, replaced by financial struggles and loneliness. He tried working behind the scenes, learning technical work like lighting and sound engineering to stay close to the world that had once embraced him. But the pay was low, and the sense of belonging never came back. By his 30s, Ken was already disillusioned. He spoke candidly in later interviews about feeling forgotten by an industry that used him up and threw him away. "When you're a child star, they love you for what you were, not for who you become," he once said, a line that revealed more pain than he probably intended. He lived quietly, without much family around. He never married, and many of his close friends described him as guarded, kind, but deeply sad. He carried the weight of being Pugsley his whole life. One childhood friend later said, "He couldn't escape it, no matter how much he tried." Then, years later, something unexpected began to happen. The Addams Family came back to life. The show found a new generation of fans through reruns and merchandise. Conventions began inviting the surviving cast members to meet fans who still adored the spooky clan. Ken was hesitant at first, but when he finally attended one of those events, everything changed. Hundreds of people lined up just to see him. They brought old photos, vintage lunchboxes, even homemade costumes. Some of them were in tears, telling him how much Pugsley had made their childhoods brighter. For the first time in decades, Ken felt loved again. It wasn't Hollywood glamour, it was human connection. He began appearing at fan conventions regularly, signing autographs and sharing stories about the show. For many who met him, he was humble, down to earth and grateful. He often told fans, "You guys kept us alive, not TV." But behind that gratitude, the loneliness persisted. The joy of recognition couldn't erase the years of pain and self-doubt. Friends later recalled that Ken had started struggling with depression again, often retreating into isolation after events. He didn't talk about money, but it was clear he was still living modestly, sometimes on the edge. Then came a moment that shifted everything. One night, after a particularly emotional fan event in the early 2010s, Ken was approached by a woman who introduced herself as a pastor's wife. She told him something that pierced through his heart. "You brought laughter to people who were in pain. God doesn't forget that." Those words stayed with him. For the first time, Ken began reconnecting with faith, something he had drifted away from years ago. He started attending small Bible studies, often sitting quietly in the back, listening more than speaking. He didn't seek attention. He wasn't there as a celebrity. He was just Ken, a man trying to find peace after a lifetime of confusion. In those quiet moments, he began to change. He forgave the industry that had rejected him. He forgave himself for the bitterness he had carried for so long. He once told a close friend, "Maybe God didn't want me famous forever, maybe he just wanted me remembered." That simple statement captured the essence of his redemption. By 2014, Ken had found a fragile kind of peace. He was living in California, taking small TV convention gigs, visiting churches, and occasionally mentoring younger actors who struggled with early fame. Those who spoke to him in his final months said he seemed calmer, more at ease with the past. But fate had one last twist. On December 7, 2014, Ken Weatherwax was found dead at his home in California. He was 59 years old. The coroner later confirmed he had suffered a heart attack. There was no foul play, no chaos, just a quiet end to a loud, misunderstood life. When news of his death broke, fans around the world reacted with shock and heartbreak. Social media flooded with black and white photos of Pugsley Addams, smiling, innocent, forever young. Many couldn't believe that the cheerful boy who had brought so much laughter had died alone. But here's the part most people never knew. Before his passing, Ken had left behind a note. It wasn't a goodbye letter, it was a prayer. A short handwritten message that read, "Thank you, Lord, for letting me make people laugh." Those who knew him best said that note reflected the man he had become, not bitter, not broken, but finally grateful. It was his final confession of peace. After his death, the Addams family community came together to honor him. Fans raised money for his funeral and headstone, ensuring he would be buried with dignity. On his grave, they inscribed a simple message that perfectly captured his life: "Our Pugsley, forever loved." It was a beautiful irony. The boy who once belonged to the strangest family on television finally found his own, not through fame, but through the love of fans, strangers, and the quiet grace of faith. In the end, Ken Weatherwax's story wasn't just about Hollywood's cruelty. It was about rediscovering purpose in the ruins of forgotten fame. His life reminds us that laughter, even from a dark, eccentric show like The Addams Family, can outlive the pain that created it. And maybe that's the real legacy of Pugsley Addams. He wasn't a superstar, he wasn't a millionaire, but he was a symbol of innocence, resilience, and the power of a smile that refused to die, even when the world stopped watching. Today, fans still visit his resting place. Some leave Addams Family trinkets, others just stand there silently, remembering the boy who made them laugh. In those moments, it feels like Ken never truly left, because somewhere in the echoes of that old black and white laughter, Pugsley Addams still lives, forever mischievous, forever young, and finally at peace.